Some rail fans believe the best railroad images are the ones you work hardest to get. Take this view of a Canadian National freight train headed east through the Thompson River Canyon a few miles west of Spence's Bridge, British Columbia. Based on the no pain, no gain school of railroad photography, it must have required a long hike just to get in place for the shot. The truth is, we did little more than pull over to the side of the road to capture this image. Nor is this some kidney-busting back road spiked with rocks and potholes, folks. This road happens to be Highway 1, otherwise known as the Trans-Canada Highway. Granted, we doubt if anyone envisioned the highway as one of the great train-watching sites in North America, but that's what you get when you cram a paved road, two busy railroads, and a wealth of spectacular scenery into the wonderland we call Canada's Canyon Conquest. One of Canada's early explorers had this to say about travel along the Fraser River. We could scarcely make our way, even with our guns. We had to pass where no human being should venture. Simon Fraser penned those words in 1805 after his first descent of the 900-mile-long river that would later bear his name. Travel today is a lot less stressful, yet the Fraser and Thompson River canyons remain essential to all travel between the Pacific Ocean and the rest of Canada. Our journey traces Fraser's footsteps backward. We start at Hope, BC, 95 miles or so east of downtown Vancouver. Heading north, we follow the river through Yale to North Bend and Boston Bar, division points for Canadian Pacific and Canadian National, respectively. At Cisco, the two rivals cross each other as they switch riverbanks. We continue to Lytton, where the Fraser meets the Thompson River. Then we follow the Thompson northeast through BC's so-called interior to Spence's Bridge. Basque marks one of the few places where CN and CP coexist on the same side of the river. Then we continue through the so-called dry belt to the end of our story at Ashcroft, BC. CN and CP mainly use modern high-horsepower diesels in the canyon. CP, for example, powers most of its coal trains with newer General Electric AC 4400 CWs. Equipped with AC traction for improved performance, they crank out 4,400 horsepower. The newest units also wear CP's latest paint scheme. The gold beaver logo on the side of this AC 4400 harkens back to an earlier CP design. Another link to the past is the mostly red paint scheme, which has its roots in the action red colors introduced as part of CP's image makeover in 1969. The latest additions to CP's line haul freights are General Motors SD90-43 Max. These newer units displaced most of the 3,000 horsepower GM SD40-2s that ruled this line for many years. CP 9018 is an iron horse of a different color. CP calls it a DRF 30, short for Diesel Road Freight 3,000 horsepower. They're more commonly known as SD40-2Fs, nicknamed Red Barns. 9018's full-length car body houses the same 16-cylinder 645 engine as a standard SD40-2. Although 9018's Canadian cab is safer and more comfortable than 5934's standard Spartan cab, both sport standard Canadian-issue low-mounted headlights. CN also knows it's what's up front that counts. The hottest trains on the railroad often rate newer GM SD75Is rated at 4,300 horsepower. Unlike CP, CN is content with conventional DC traction systems. GE cracked the Canadian locomotive market in 1990 with its Dash 8 series. Like CP 9018, CN 2448 has a full cowl car body more suited to cold weather operation than conventional hood units. CN Class EF 640 translates into a 4,000 horsepower 6-motor C40-8 CM. Another thing you find only on Canadian diesels, bilingual instructions. CN's SD50 and SD60Fs wear GM's version of the Canadian cab. Since the early 1960s, CN diesels have worn some combination of vermilion, black, white, and yellow. For the most part, you won't see these and other units in local or switch service. Unit trains make up a large percentage of the traffic on CN and CP. Coal, grain, and potash moves west, and the empties return east. CP coal trains generally use 3 AC 4400s. Most of the time, the third unit is located in the middle of the train. Unlike a traditional helper engine, it's remotely controlled by the engineer in the lead engine. The additional tractive effort helps CP coal trains make track speed, always a problem on a route cursed with tight curves and some stiff grades. The power for several CN unit trains during our visit in 1999 were GCFX SD40Rs, rebuilt from former CN SD40s. Other traffic includes intermodal freight moving in trailers and containers mounted on flat cars. Arguably, the lowest priority trains on CN and CP are merchandise freights. On the other hand, modest speed limits in the canyons tend to level the playing field. CN and CP are both single-track railroads governed by Centralized Traffic Control, or CTC. No fuss meets keep things moving smoothly. At East Yale, an eastbound empty coal train holds the siding at dusk. The train is headed back to southeast BC, where it will be loaded with more coal and sent west again, a conveyor belt on flanged wheels. Minutes later, the westbound train appears. It's another coal load, likely export coal, headed for the rail-to-ship transloading facility at Roberts Bank near Vancouver. After the westbound clears, the CP dispatcher in Calgary, Alberta gives the eastbound the signal to leave. The AC 4400s up front wave goodbye with a smudge of smoke, not unusual for four-stroke GE diesels. The one you're not likely to see sitting in a siding is the Rocky Mountaineer. Riding CN rails through the canyons, this privately owned passenger train offers a 2-day, all-daylight rail tour between Vancouver and Calgary. The train overnights in Kamloops, and eastbound splits into 2 sections there, one for Jasper on CN and one for Calgary on CP. The layover ensures that the entire trip takes place during daylight hours. Power for the Rocky Mountaineer are second-hand GP40s rebuilt to -2 standards and leased from Helm Locomotive. Passengers ride in upgraded coaches purchased from Via Rail Canada, Canada's nationwide passenger railroad. Passengers also ride in luxury bi-level domes rebuilt from Humdrum's Southern Pacific commuter coaches. The Rocky Mountaineer isn't the only passenger train seen between Hope and Ashcroft, but it's likely the only one you'll see in daylight hours. That's because Via Rail Canada's tri-weekly Canadian passes through here at night. Hope calls itself the gateway to the interior. First settled by fur traders in 1848, it took its name from the hope that a trade route to Fort Kamloops would be British, not American. As it turned out, they had nothing to worry about. From Hope, the Trans-Canada Highway heads up the Fraser River to Kamloops. Hope also marks milepost 40.2 on CN's Yale subdivision, which hugs the east bank of the Fraser between here and Cisco. This empty coal train rolling through Odlum has little choice but to head east on CP's Cascade sub to North Bend. But at one time, Odlum was the junction for CP's Hope Spur, which served the city until the early 1970s. The spur was the last remnant of CP's Kettle Valley Railway, officially abandoned in 1961. The CP trains that roll through Yale today offer no clue to the town's raucous history. In the spring of 1858, gold was discovered at Hill's Bar on the east bank of the Fraser. The gold rush that followed found some 3,000 miners working gravel bars on the 15 miles of river between Hope and Yale. Yale's modest business district along Highway 1 is a shadow of what it was during the gold rush years. Then, Yale was home to scores of saloons and dance halls. For the young Canadian Pacific Railway, the line between Ashcroft and Hope was arguably the toughest part of the railroad's BC construction. The task fell to Andrew Onderdonk, a 30-year-old American engineer. For Onderdonk's 1880 construction crews, there was only one solution to the rock outcroppings along the Fraser River: tunnels. Over 18 months, 4 tunnels were blasted within 1 mile of Yale. Onderdonk's crews went on to blast a total of 25 tunnels through the Fraser and Thompson River canyons. first CP train reached Vancouver from Montreal on May 23, 1887. 112 years later, we wonder, what would Andrew Onderdonk think of his railroad today? Construction difficulties aside, CP chose the easiest route through the canyon, the benefit of being first on the scene. When a second railroad decided to build through the canyon 30 years later, it had little choice but to choose the other side of the river. The new kid in town was the Canadian Northern Pacific, later part of Canadian National. As things turned out, the time difference worked in CN's favor. The railroad had the advantage of 30 years of advancements in railroad building technology. Key to the line's construction was the use of heavy machinery to cut and tunnel through rock. CN built 16 tunnels in less than 30 miles and wound up with a ruling grade of less than 1% in both directions. Compared to CP, CN's route is less expensive to maintain and operate, relatively speaking, than the older CP line. CN and CP weren't the first transportation routes through the Fraser River Canyon. This humble trail in a provincial park near Lytton is a remnant of the Caribou Wagon Road. Built in the 1860s, the 308-mile-long road ran north from Yale to the newly discovered coal fields near the mouth of the Fraser River at Barkerville. The construction of the CPR damaged the old road. The road's slide into disrepair was hastened by the flood of 1894, which washed away many of the spindly wood trestles used to skirt cliffs and bluffs. The growth of auto traffic after World War I triggered the need for another road through the canyon. With the best routes already claimed by the railroads, finding a route was difficult. What came to be called the Fraser Canyon Highway was completed to Ashcroft in 1927. The end of World War II triggered another shift toward more auto traffic. In response, the federal and 10 provincial governments agreed to upgrade existing highways or build new ones as part of the Trans-Canada Highway between Victoria, BC and Newfoundland. As planned, the Trans-Canada Highway was to have a 100-foot right-of-way and gravel shoulders where feasible. With parts of the route sandwiched between the river and two railroads, this wasn't always possible. When the project was completed, it was the longest paved road in the world, built at a cost of over $1 billion. A crucial link in the Fraser Canyon Highway was the Alexandra Suspension Bridge. This wasn't the first bridge to cross the Fraser at this point. The original bridge, damaged in the same flood that destroyed much of the Caribou Wagon Road, was built in 1863. The second bridge, a virtual duplicate of its predecessor, was built in 1926 at the same location. When the Trans-Canada Highway opened, traffic shifted to a new high-level bridge to the south. The old bridge survives as part of the Alexandra Bridge Provincial Park, located at the east end of the old bridge. Now, the only traffic here are tourists, including us. The new bridge is nothing to sneeze at either. Stretching 1,610 feet from end to end, it towers 130 feet above the river. When completed, it was the second largest fixed arch span in the world, a record it may still hold. The first building established at Spuzzum was a depot for the Hudson's Bay Company. The town takes its name from an Indian word that means little flat. Prior to the construction of a bridge over the Fraser, a ferry crossed the river here. In later years, Spuzzum was a toll house on the Caribou Wagon Road, a distinction it shared with Yale, Lytton, and Spence's Bridge. We found remnants of both roads near the east switch at Spuzzum. What looks like a dirt path on the left is the Caribou Wagon Road. To the right is the remains of the Fraser Canyon Highway. China Bar offers another chance to compare roads. At 2,000 feet, China Bar Tunnel is the longest of 7 tunnels on Highway 1. The tunnel replaced a section of the Fraser Canyon Highway that clung to the side of the cliff instead. Remnants of a wood trestle show how the road was suspended several hundred feet above the river. Granted, the old road offered a fine view of the canyon and CP's line across the river, but one mistake and you'd be trackside in the worst way. Hell's Gate is a timetable station on CP, a 602-foot tunnel by the same name on CN. Hell's Gate has always been a hindrance to transportation. Indians used ladders to cross here, and canoes rarely dared its whirlpools. Only one sternwheeler, Andrew Onderdonk's Scuzzy, used to carry supplies in the construction of the CPR, ever conquered it. Today you can not only travel through Hell's Gate, you can ride into it. A pair of enclosed air trams carry visitors to the west bank of the river. The 500-foot descent offers a view that's, well, don't take our word for it. See for yourself. Highway 1 below Hell's Gate offers views of a different sort, at least for rail fans. 5 miles east of Hell's Gate stands another site bound to snag a railfan's attention, CN's Anderson River Bridge. At 914 feet long and 112 feet high, it makes a dramatic setting for this eastbound CN merchandise freight. The towns of Boston Bar on CN and North Bend on CP have traditionally been crew change points for the railroads, although that may be changing. At Boston Bar, eastbounds such as this grain train leave the Yale sub for the Ashcroft sub to Kamloops, BC. Since 1996, CN has introduced interdivisional runs between Kamloops and Vancouver. This allows some trains to operate through Boston Bar without stopping to change crews, including this eastbound stack train. For now, so-called double subbers involve only half of CN's trains. For the rest, changing crews is still a ritual here. Part of the interdivisional negotiations involved upgraded crew quarters for the crews. In place of the old bunkhouse next to the main, CN built a new modular building further from the tracks. At least CN's Boston Bar station survives. Built in 1915, the two-story depot resembles stations at other CN division points in BC. The building is like the old joke about good news, bad news. The good news, it's been saved from demolition. The bad news, the renovation is apparently a low priority. This CP train's another story. It's using CN trackage rights because of a track maintenance window on its own line. For this reason, some CP crews are qualified to run on CN and vice versa. There's a Boston Bar East and a Boston Bar West. At Boston Bar East, the Rocky Mountaineer slides past a westbound in the hole. Moments later, an eastbound hustles out of town, led by SD75I 5782 in the current version of CN's stylish paint scheme. This view at Boston Bar West shows trains waiting to head west. A loaded coal train powered by leased GCFX units looks to be next. Unlike CP, CN coal trains do not require helpers, mid-train or otherwise. Before the coal train can make a move, an eastbound stack train rolls into town. After the eastbound clears, the coal train crew makes its move. Boston Bar and North Bend are connected by the Cog Harrington Bridge. Built in 1986, it replaced a unique aerial ferry with a one-car capacity that took 90 seconds to cover the 960 feet between loading points. At North Bend, westbounds exchanged the Thompson sub for the Cascade sub. Like CN, CP replaced older crew facilities with newer modular buildings. Just west of the facility sits the yard office and a railroad restaurant called a beanery. Like its predecessor, the beanery is open to the public. When you're finished with your French fries with gravy, you can stroll outside at dusk and watch a CP westbound coal train change crews. Less than 20 miles east of Boston Bar, a pair of crosses sits at the top of a steep slope on the west side of Highway 1. Like divining rods, they direct your attention down this steep slope to the CN timetable station of Conrad. At trackside, a memorial marks the site of a washout that took the lives of 2 CN crew members here on March 26, 1997. With little time to react, the crew rode the locomotives into the river, where they remain to this day. Cisco takes its name from the Indian word that means unpredictable, an apt description of the Fraser. The CP Bridge is 528 feet long and stands 142 feet above low water. When CN's predecessor built through here 30 years later, it was forced to cross to the other side of the river. The resulting span is an 812-foot long span with one 425-foot arch span. An interchange between CN and CP was surveyed and prepared during World War I, but the 1.3-mile connection wasn't built until 1977 when a fire damaged CN's Fraser River Bridge. Lytton marks the junction of Highway 12 to Lillooet, at one time milepost 0 on the Caribou Wagon Road. The town was once the site of an Indian village called the Great Fork. Here, the Thompson River empties its clear, cold waters into the murky Fraser. Unlike the Thompson, the Fraser's turbulent waters prevent the glacier and mud sediments from settling. Those same rapids draw rafters to both rivers with easy access at Lytton. Lytton is home to a preserved CN wood caboose called Vans in Canada. Painted a somewhat garish shade of CN's traditional vermilion, the wood van wears CN's steam-era herald. Across the street from the van sits another CN relic, the Lytton Depot. Built in 1915, the preserved structure retains the sign that shows the rail mileage to both Vancouver and Montreal. CN's remaining structure in Lytton is a maintenance storage building, a nondescript setting for this westbound unit grain train. This bridge across the Thompson is one of two CN built within a mile of each other to reach Lytton. From here, the highway and the railroad follows the Thompson most of the way to Kamloops. There's no clear demarcation between the Fraser and Thompson River regions. Gradually, the Fraser's dark green cedars, characteristic of a wetter climate, give way to the airy yellow pines of the Thompson, a dry region known as the interior. The difference in climate is the result of warm, moist currents of air sweeping over the coast mountain barrier. Cooled by low temperatures at the high elevations, the currents drop their moisture. The air, now dried, streams down the eastern slopes and grows warmer as it drops in elevation. In this warm, dry condition, the air quickly absorbs moisture, which dries out the first valleys it encounters. 14 miles east of Lytton, a CP work train dives into the siding at Drynock to clear a westbound coal train. The train consists of a single SD40-2, flanger 102-875, a string of side dump ballast cars, and a CP van. After the westbound clears, the work train heads out of the west end of the siding to resume dumping track ballast west of Drynock. Except for meets like this, trains in the lower Thompson Canyon generally follow the advice of the Fleetwood Mac song, "Don't Stop." The rocky topography of the Thompson Canyon can be a headache for CN. At Cape Horn, relief comes in a series of tunnels and rock sheds. In places, the track sits on a shelf directly in the path of several large gravel flumes. After heavy rainfalls, the water rushes into these flumes, pulverizing the blocks of eroded rock into gravel. Sheds divert the falling debris from the tracks. The CN Maintainers Bridge at Skunka looks like something from an Indiana Jones movie. Unfortunately for any maintainer with a fear of heights, it's the simplest way to reach the rock sheds and tunnels on the west bank of the river. In 1964, as part of the Caribou Wagon Road, Thomas Spence built a $15,000 bridge across the Thompson River. Since Spence was allowed to charge a toll for the bridge, the community came to be known as Spence's Bridge. Known as the Bridge, Spence's Bridge was the western outlet of CP's now defunct southern route across British Columbia. No longer a division point, Spence's Bridge today is little more than a parking lot for CP work train equipment. The Maintenance of Way Department is often the last stop for aging rolling stock before it goes to that big scrapyard in the sky. A good example is this 40-foot boxcar, once a common sight on CP freights before the advent of jumbo covered hoppers and plug-door insulated boxcars. CN runs through the new Spence's Bridge built along Highway 1 on the west side of the river. The bridge in the background stands on the site of the original Spence's Bridge. One of the biggest attractions in Spence's Bridge are the Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep that occasionally wander into town to feed. At one time, there were probably close to 1 million bighorn sheep in North America. Now the number is closer to 25,000. You can't miss the sheep or the signs that warn you to slow down for sheep on the highway. And when you're finished sheep fanning, you can always catch a few trains in town. North from Spence's Bridge, the railroad climbs into the interior plateau. Fruit stands sell locally produced apples, corn, and other products. Many farms date back to the 1860s when disappointed miners decided there was more money to be made from farming than panning for gold. Basque takes its name from the Basque Ranch, started by a Frenchman from the Basque region of Spain. This region is a tongue of the Sonoran Desert. It angles northwestward from Mexico to Kamloops then west to the Lillooet area, then south to the junction of the Thompson and Fraser Rivers at Lytton. To underscore the point, the area's annual precipitation is only 7 inches. Basque has another claim to fame. It's the only place where CN and CP share the same side of the river. That also makes the east end of Basque the logical place to build a connection between the two carriers. There's long been talk of directional running in the canyon. The idea is to run eastbounds on CP and westbounds on CN. Should that come to pass, Basque will play an important part in this plan. The end of our story is Ashcroft, named for a ranch established here in 1862. With the completion of the CPR, Ashcroft replaced Yale as gateway to the Caribou. The town was the only shipping point for thousands of head of cattle raised in the grazing lands that stretched north for 200 miles. The exception to the rule that most freights roll through the canyon without stopping is CP's Ashcroft Way Freight. Called for 6 days of the week, the local serves a handful of customers between Kamloops and Ashcroft. During our visit, the local had a single SD40-2. Picking up and setting out cars, or lifts and drops as Canadian railroaders call it, is a long way from the mainline freight service this unit was built for. We wonder if it envies the diesels working the mainline freights roaring through Ashcroft. The equipment on the rear of the local is another survivor, a CP van. Even parked at the east end of the yard, the old girl looks good. Across the river, CN freights breeze past the newer homes that overlook the west bank. The sun, as usual, can't seem to decide whether it wants to stay out or behind a cloud. Give us a westbound and good light, and we'll be back across the river in hot pursuit on Highway 1. In fact, forget the good light. As long as there's a train moving in the canyons, we're there.
Thank you for watching this Trans-Canadian edition of the Ultimate Railroading DVD series. We hope you'll look forward to future Trans-Canadian Edition DVDs and all that the Ultimate Railroading DVD series has to offer.